Without a doubt, one person does not a station make. But if one man has served as a cornerstone for KTIB's successful history, then Raymond Saadi would fit the bill. In his years as station manager and later owner, KTIB and KHOM provided countless hours of news, information, and musical enjoyment. Let's listen to what he has to say about those formative days of South Louisiana radio. Mr. Raymond Saadi, how are you doing today, sir?
Doing fine. How you doing?
Start off in the beginning. Are you a native of our area?
Yeah, I'm a native of Houma, and but I consider Thibodaux my second home, maybe one and a half. You know, love Thibodaux.
Which high school did you attend?
St. Francis. St. Francis de Sales.
Did you go to college as well?
Yeah, I went to Loyola University in New Orleans, and did a few things here at Nichols.
Very good. Now, before you came into work at KTIB back in 1955, did you have any other jobs before coming here?
Oh yeah, I came here I previously was working in television in Lake Charles, Louisiana, at a UHF station. And we were doing pretty good until the VHF station went on the air. You may not even know what I'm talking about at your age, do you?
I believe.
Do you know what UHF is?
In other words, on the antenna of the television, UHF, I think, is 14 to 83. It was the lower powered frequencies and
yeah, lower power, higher frequencies. It required a special antenna and a special receiver because TV sets in those days only had 12 channels on there, 2 to 13. Is that 12?
That's right.
At any rate, so one of the things we had to do in Lake Charles was go out and sell converters so people could pick up the darn little station that hardly went anywhere. But we were the only gang in Lake Charles for a year. And then when the VHF powerful station came on, nobody needed us anymore. No antennas, no converters, no UHF station. It didn't last long after that.
I believe that big station, was that Channel 7 that came on?
That was it. That was it.
So how did you get linked up with KTIB in 1955?
Well, let me think about it. Well, I was offered a job before the station went on the air. And I waited for them to get on the air, and they weren't getting on the air. And I had a chance to go into TV in Lake Charles, so I took it. And I had no sooner taken it than I got a call from one of the owners, says, "Are we ready?" And I said, "Well, I already took another job." So I'm kind of sorry I didn't just move over here right then. So they got started Christmas Eve, 1953. And I got here almost 2 years later, 55.
What was your first duty over here? Was it primarily in sales?
Strictly sales. And then I did some announcing, and that was, you know, and back then you did everything. In July of 56, the manager of the station left. He was also the chief engineer, which was an unusual combination back then. But he became the general manager when the original manager had a heart attack and died. The first manager of the station, Mr. Benzabat. And so they just called me up one day and said, "Would you like to be the manager?" I said, "I couldn't even spell manager." You know, I said, "Sure, I'd love to be the manager." So that's they threw me in here, and I'm happy to say they gave me every opportunity to make as many mistakes as I wanted. I made a lot, but I learned, so I appreciated that.
And one thing I was talking with my family about, if I'm right, the building we're in right now here on Green Street, these are not the original studios. Wasn't there another part of Thibodaux?
Oh, yeah, 2 others. Matter of fact, this is the second oldest building in Thibodaux, by the way. But the original building, the original studios were above the Lafourche Comet, which at the time was on 5th Street. Well, the Comet's still there. And one of the owners, Ed Jackson, was one of the radio station, was also a co-owner of the newspaper. And they had this space upstairs. We only had, I think, 4 rooms up there. That was the whole radio station. And that's where we started out. Later, in about 1961 or 2, we moved right down the street from here. What the sheriff's office is now was the First Federal Building, and we occupied part of that. That's where we were during Hurricane Betsy, when we were the only radio station you could pick up among all of them. Every single one in New Orleans was off the air. We were it. And we were it only because we had just installed a generator at the transmitter, and then we had a little 1 kilowatt generator there at the studio. Used to have to run out every hour and put more gas in the thing. But we stayed on the air. It was a proud moment for us.
I was going to say, since meteorology was my college major, actually going through the heart of Betsy that night, that must have been pretty nerve-wracking, I guess, at some point.
Yeah, it was. As a matter of fact, the winds were blowing and we had no telephones. The only power we had was just that one little generator, which wasn't enough to work the lights on the board. So we were actually broadcasting through a tiny little battery-operated tape recorder by going into the recording, coming out the output of it into one of the patch cords that took us to the transmitter. So when the power finally totally failed, that's how we stay on the air. So it was nerve-wracking, you're right.
Now, when did the studios move from there to where we are now?
We moved the station here in, let me see, 1968, I would say. I think that was about right, 1968, right before we made the move. Might have been 67, let's see. Right before we made the move in the air, I left KTIB to go to Houma and build KHOM. And then 3 years later, we came and we bought KTIB from the original owners.
Now, and that, ironically, that's going to be my next question. When you left here to go start up KHOM, had it always been a dream of yours to start your own station?
Oh, yeah. Any radio station manager you ever talk to has that one goal. I want to own my own radio station. And that opportunity came up. But it was with FM, back when FM wasn't cool, and people had to go out and buy sets. They had to buy converters for their cards. But we hit upon an ironic stroke of luck in a way. We were over there and we were doing pretty well, but then the teachers of Terrebonne Parish went on strike. And there was very little coverage of it from the other station in the market. I mean, they just weren't on it at all. And we jumped on that story, and we won the confidence of both the teachers and the union people and the school board. And we were privy to private meetings and everything else. We were able to really ride that story for the whole length. And as a result, we were breaking all kind of headlines over there. And the sale of FM sets went through the roof over there. Everybody had to have one. And it got to be known if you wanted the news, you had to have an FM set to tune the KHOM. And then 3 years later, we came back here. We adopted that same principle, that news would dominate, no matter what. Music was what we did in between newscasts. So that was our thing. We did as much sports as we could. And much later, I may be anticipating and going too fast here. But later, we applied for and got nighttime power, even though it was at reduced power. We had increased day power. It used to be a 500-watt daytime-only station at 6:30 on the dial. We had an opportunity when the FCC cleared the clear channels, of which 640 was one, to put on several, you could put on maybe a dozen stations across the country on that one frequency. And we applied for it, we got it. They gave us 5,000 watts a day and 1,000 at night, but we had to move from 6:30 to 640. We had to build 3 towers instead of just the one. So we spent a lot of money on that, but then we were able to do all the nighttime sports, high school, basketball, college, the whole bit.
Now, going back to KHOM, because I'm sure a lot of people may have a general idea, it's not just easy to poop overnight, start up a radio station. So how long did it take from the planning stages to get KHOM on the air?
Oh, it went from about, I'd say it was close to 2 years, I think, because there were competing applications for the frequency, and we had to go before the FCC to plead our case. And we won. First battle was to get them to move the channel to Houma. Once they did that, we filed for the radio station, and somebody filed too. So there were 2 battles going on then. We won that one too, because the challenger was a man who already owned an FM station in Houma. But it was a 3,000 watter, and we were going to be a 100,000 watter, and he would like to have moved up. So.
Very, very understandable. Now, when you came back and you bought the station here in, I guess it would have been 1973, was that a pretty smooth transition to purchase KTIB?
Oh, yeah. The owners had decided, after going through 3 managers after I left, the station wasn't doing well. It was on tough times. And they just decided to give up on it, and decided to sell it. And we offered to buy it, and accepted the offer, and it was just a matter of waiting for the FCC to approve it. Now, one of the complications was, however, KTIB in 1967, we had an opportunity to build an FM station. It was an FM frequency. So I persuaded the owners that we should build that, apply for it and build it, which we did. And so KTIB had the AM, we had the FM, 106.3, which later became KHOM. But at any rate, we had done that. Well, you couldn't own 2 FMs in the same market. So when we went to buy KTIB, we had to divest ourselves of KHOR. So we had to try to sell it, but nobody wanted to buy an FM radio station. Particularly, they didn't want to buy one and go in competition with the one we were building. And we ended up almost giving it away, because had we not been able to divest ourselves, there was a good chance the whole sale wouldn't have gone through. And we just would not have had it, you see. So it did go through. We were able to divest the station and go on.
And I believe at the time when you bought KTIB, was it Mr. Block was the primary owner?
No, there were 3 equal owners. Ferd Block, who owned Block Furniture, Peacock Jewelry, Ellis Bro, and was an instrumental, probably the instrumental impetus to building First Federal Savings and Loan, which is now Whitney Bank. And he was a real leader in the community. With him was Ed Jackson, who was co-editor of the paper, and probably the guy who got to thinking about building a radio station was a man named Sam Larson from Rayson, who was a salesman for Graybar Electric, sold electric components to electricians. And also at the early stages, in trying to get the frequency, Ed Jackson's partner, Mr. Silverberg, was a partner in that, and he got tired, I think, of the long process of fighting. There was some people fighting for the frequency, also in Houma, and I think he dropped out. The other 3 stayed in.
Okay. Now, of course, over the years at both stations, just so many employees on and off the air that helped make it tremendously successful. And I tried to go down the list of the names I could remember that worked under your tenure. So what I'll do is I'll just read off the names, and you tell me overall about, having them as part of the team. One of the most outstanding newsmen we ever had in the area, Roy Vignair.
Well, Roy actually wasn't a newsman. He was a program director, board operator, morning man. Probably had longevity. He was here for a long time. Then he left to come to KHOM, where he was a morning man. Then he left to come back here after we sold KHOM, and stayed with us a pretty good long time. So Roy talked to him the other day. He just moved from Houma to La Place, be close to his daughters, and he had a long and wonderful career in radio here.
And probably the most famous female voice we've ever had in local radio, Marie Bergeron.
Bergeron, absolutely. Marie was unequal in news, and she also was a top salesperson at the same time. And what was really funny, William, is that she wanted to do neither. And when I asked her to, she left to come with me in Houma. And then she got tired of the commute, and she said she was going to come back to work here. And I said, no, you got to stay with us. And she said, well, I don't want to commute. I said, well, I'll tell you what, we have so many clients, and we do so much news from Thibodaux on KHOM. We'll build a studio in Thibodaux, and you can run it. You'll be our person in Thibodaux. She said, well, fine, as long as I don't have to do any news or any selling. So I said, okay, that was a sacred pledge. Like all of my sacred pledges. Well, one day I used to come up here and cover the school board and things like that. One day I'd call and say, Maria, I can't make it up. Would you just take the recorder and go over to the school board office or go to the city council, I think it was. And pretty soon, it became a habit, you know, I'd let her go. And then pretty soon, she started writing the stories. And pretty soon, I'd say, look, I can't get up to such and such a client. Would you just go over and get the copy? I mean, you're not selling it. Pretty soon she was doing that, and the next thing you know, she was full-fledged, top-notch, and eventually ended up being the manager of this radio station. She's terrific, one of the most terrific employees anyone could ever have.
And, of course, as a result, the most famous show this station's ever had as well, Dialogue.
Dialogue was an outgrowth, you see, over in Houma. When we built KHOM, we started Radio Roundtable, which was the precursor of all these talk shows. And when we bought KTIB, they had no talk show, so we started a similar show called Dialogue, and we gave it to Marie to do, and she did a wonderful job with it, yeah. And it's still on the air. It keeps getting moved up. We used to do it at 11:30 to noon, just a half hour. And then we moved it to 8:30. Or 8 in the morning, I don't remember now. And on the basis that maybe we could get more people early in the morning, you know. But,
very good. Now, one gentleman who worked here for a good long time and also did a lot of sports when you had the Nickel State Network, Roy Pugh.
Roy Pugh was an engineer. He had a first-class license. There was a time back then where you had to have a first-class engineer, an engineer with a first-class FCC license, but that changed, and pretty soon you could hire anybody. You didn't have to have it. You didn't have to have a first-class engineer. But Roy had a first-class ticket. He was hired by Mr. Block in that interim period when I had left here. As an engineer, they needed an engineer, and they needed a sports guy. Well, if you know any sports guys, I think you might even be one. They'll go anywhere and do anything to get on the air and do sports. You know, they love sports. So there are a lot of people available. He was a really good one. He worked very hard. He did sales, he did sports, he did the engineering. He was a first-class, all-around super guy.
Now, one gentleman who was a regular for many years on daytime, of course, many folks remember him as the host of the Swap Shop, Les Domain.
Les Domain. Les did Swap Shop for, I think, a station down the bayou originally, and the one in Houma. And eventually, he came to work for me. Let's see, I think came to KHOM and then to KTIB. So Les made a lot of rounds, but he was the original Swap Shop guy. And when you talk about it, that's the guy people remember. Everybody else who did Swap Shop was a regular announcer who did that as an extra chore. But Les was Mr. Swap Shop. He was the guy.
I tell people the funny story of one of his live shows. A lady called him to say that she had a dog available for stud service, and his reply was, well, ma'am, is it a male or a female?
Yeah, that's a famous story.
Another gentleman who was pretty famous for sports, I think, in fact, if my memory's right, I think he followed Roy Pugh with Nickel State, and that's Darren Fonts.
Darren Fonts. Darren came up here, applied for the job. We had advertised for a sports guy. And Darren, do you know Darren? Darren was a little fuzzy-cheeked, kind of young-looking guy, you know, and very soft-spoken. Came up in this very office, and Maria and I were interviewing him, and we just looked at each other and he said, "This guy, you know, he just doesn't have it. We can't hire him." And he happened to mention that he had an audition tape of a game that he had done. I said, "Well, do you have it with you?" He says, "Yeah, I had it downstairs." So he went down to get it, brought it up, we put it in the machine. It was a totally different voice, delivery, and everything. It was super. We hired him on the spot. Darren continued to be pretty mild-mannered, except when he was doing sports. He would just become a totally different person, you know. But he did a wonderful job for us.
One gentleman who a lot of people remember, I believe primarily on weekends because he played an awful lot of music and well, famous for doing music shows, I guess, primarily, Leroy Martin.
Leroy Martin. He was here before I first got here. I think Leroy was here from the very beginning, and he worked just a Saturday show, the Leroy Martin Show, about 5 hours, and he was extremely popular. He had his own band. Eventually, he'd go out and play, and he had some recordings along with Vin Bruce and a couple of other notables around here. Leroy then went on to become the assessor, one of the longest-serving ones, and now his son has that job. And Leroy is, I guess, Leroy, you're happily retired and fishing or something, you know. But he was a good guy, yeah.
A gentleman used to work at both stations by the name of Jimmy Cole.
Jimmy Cole was, Jimmy worked for us at both stations, and he was an announcer. When we bought the station, we changed the format to country, and Jimmy had worked country, and he came in here and he really knew it, and he was able to put us in the right direction. People were a little shocked and upset when we changed it, but it was a hot format, and it really went very well. And Jimmy worked with us for a good time. He's a real good employee.
Latter term of your ownership here, there was a gentleman who came in who also did a lot of sports for you, who I actually spoke to recently, David Salzman.
Oh, what a beautiful employee. David was terrific, but we wanted a newsman. He wanted sports. We kept trying to hire him as a newsman. No, he didn't just want sports. He wanted college sports, so he wanted Nichols. So when Roy left, we needed actually, we had someone in between, I believe. We had Steve Calderera did that in between for us, and then we were able to hire Salzman on the basis that he would also do news. And when he came in, we slipped the morning show in on him at the same time. David took it all in stride. Got up early, did a beautiful morning show. I mean, he really worked at it and made it a wonderful show. Then he would do the news, even if it was night meetings, whatever, and he'd do the sports. And he was an employee that I never knew ever once to say no to any request. I mean, he's the kind of employee I think anybody would be proud to have. We were really sorry to lose him, but when Nichols decided to go their own way after all the years we had worked with him, and he couldn't do the games anymore, well, he just took off, you know. Got another job, went home to Texas.
In fact, if I'm right, what would be his last day here at KTIB? You called him on the air on his last dialogue show.
Yeah, he's a great guy. We still talk every now and then, email, and he gets to Thibodeau every now and then. He made a lot of friends here.
Very much so. Now, one gentleman who some of the younger listeners may have forgotten about because he had a very established career at Channel 8 in New Orleans, as well as with the Tulane Football Network, who I think started out here at both of these stations, Ken Berthelot.
Ken Berthelot was, he had a degree in microbiology, but that didn't matter. He wanted to be on the radio, and we had advertised in New Orleans for I guess a sports news guy, you know, sports mainly, and he applied, and we hired him at KHOM, and he was terrific. I mean, everybody wanted to do college, and they wanted to, LSU and Nichols and that, but he really got interested in high school. He put these kids on the air, and they had never been on the air before, and he did a beautiful job for us. And then later he came over here, and then he went over when he got the chance to go to Tulane. I don't blame him. He took the job. And
now, another established Channel 8 anchor who started out at over here, I guess, at both stations, Margaret Dubuisson.
Margaret was a protege of Marie Bergeron. I think she'd tell you that she learned everything that she knows about news from Marie. Marie taught her. Marie didn't have any formal training, neither did I for that matter, in broadcast engineering or news reporting, sales, anything. We learned it out in the field. And oh yeah, she was good. She was really, I don't know that she ever worked for KHOM though. I may be wrong about that. When you talk to Marie, she will remember everything. I can promise you that. And she has a terrific memory. And but she trained Margaret, and Margaret got an opportunity to go on to TV and went to Channel 12. And as you know, she had a wonderful career over there.
Now, another gentleman who I admitted I had forgotten about, but I was looking this up. I believe it's pronounced Richard Luquette.
Richard Luquette.
Thank you.
Yeah, Richard Luquette.
Okay.
Yeah, Richard was with us at both stations over a period of time, and he did mostly news for us, did some announcing. Richard's now I think he's in the computer consultancies and things like that, or selling them. Mm-hmm. I'd talked to him a long time. But the thing about Marie Bergeron is she's got a wonderful memory, but she had a wonderful instinct for hiring people. I mean, she hired people I don't think I would have ever hired who turned out to be wonderful employees. I think right now, every employee here, part-time employee, because I hired Linda with Marie. Marie and I hired Linda, the manager here. But all of the part-timers were hired by Marie. And they worked for us for long. They all left, and I noticed they're all back, pretty much operating the station. So she had a good instinct for people.
Of course, KTIB has been the home of Saints football since day one. Is there a particular thing with the Saints you remember more than others?
No, really. We got on with them when they first started. And between KTIB and KHOM, we had them every year, except one where a competitor sneaked in there and got it away from us. But what was interesting, the Saints had just started charging for the games. The minimum amount was like $50 a game. They would charge a fee for stations to carry, and I won't mention any names, but the station that got the games away from us halfway through the season got them pulled away because they hadn't made a single payment. So we got a call from the Saints one day. Said, "Would you like to stay?" He said, "Yeah, we'll take you back." Same thing happened in a way with Nichols. We started with Nichols. This is what kind of upset me when they did the thing they did recently. Is that Nichols had started with flag football, mostly a sort of intramural thing, and then they had a little league or something. Then they had, they weren't even a full-fledged team, and we started doing their games. And after maybe the first, second year, Coach Didier was also the athletic director. Decided to put the games out for bid and sent a letter out to all the radio stations around here asking them to bid. Well, I took exception to that. I thought we had been faithful to them and we'd done a lot for them, other than just, without even discussing it with them, going to put it out to bid. So we didn't bid. Guess what? Nobody else did either. And it wasn't long after Coach Didier came up and said, "Won't you do the games?" I said, "Yeah, provided there be no more bidding, we'll do the games from now on." And we did them for every year after that until just recently. We had some good sports things. We followed teams that went on to play in playoffs. E.D. White. I was about to say Thibodeau College, E.D. White. And Thibodeau High, we followed them. We followed Nichols when they went up to play in the frozen tundra or wherever it was, you know. And we spent a lot of money following teams and being, you know, faithful to them. We went where they needed us to go.
Earlier days as well, wasn't a gentleman who later worked at Channel 9, Dan Bourne, also part of your staff?
Well, Danny Bourne, who changed his name to Dan Bournet, because Dan was funny. Dan started as a part-time employee with us when he was at Nichols. And Dan always had the ambition that he was going to be a big star on television. And it was funny because he pasted a white sheet on the wall in the control room that would be approximately where a teleprompter would be in a TV station. And he would practice doing the news and looking up at the wall. I walked in, I said, "What is that?" He says, "That's the camera." I said, "Well, okay, Dan." So Dan was with us during Betsy or the day after. And the day after, by the way, we had with the United States Senator Russell Long, we had the U.S. Congressman there, we had the Governor McKiffen, Mayor Toops, we had a room full of dignitaries. Back then you had to get permission to stay on the air after the sundown closing. You didn't really wait for it, you just sent a telegram to the FCC saying, "We have an emergency and we're going to stay on." And of course we stayed on overnight, and we were on all during the meetings and everything that happened the next day and thereafter. And I remember Danny was running the board the next day. Roy Vigner and I ran the control board all overnight, and it was quite an experience back to that. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier, of course, KTIB for quite a long time had a country music format, but wasn't there a point, I guess, in either the late 80s or early 90s, y'all decided to switch to more of a easy listening format?
Yeah, I'm really sorry you brought that up, because that was probably my biggest mistake. I decided that country wasn't going anywhere, and then we were going to get out of it and go into something more adult, sort of adult contemporary. And that was the day before country music exploded. The next day, everything went country. Country became number one. Every station in the country, the FMs discovered country. And that was a killer. That was a killer for AM country music. I guess the thing, and I think there'd probably still be a market for it, but it would be older people, is to have an AM station maybe play classic country or the bluegrass, and you know, you still got Ricky Skaggs and these guys, and that's good music.
Right.
And in fact, he was on the Boston Pop Sing July 4th, I think it was. So that was the biggest programming error I think I ever made.
Now, but of course, I guess it would have been a little shortly after that you went to the format we're famous for now, and that's oldies, right?
We went to oldies, yeah, and that was after, see, we had gone oldies at KHOM, and that was a sensational format on FM, because it was the first time that oldies were on FM in the area. And it just took off like a house of fire. When we sold the radio station, that's when we said, well, we'll keep the oldies, you know, we'll keep that audience, so we just shifted the format here to KTIB.
Okay. Was it a pretty difficult decision to go ahead and sell KHOM and then a little bit later KTIB after all the years you had put into broadcasting?
Yeah, it was traumatic. And actually, KHOM had become a metropolitan station with the signal it had. It really, without my wanting it to happen, became a New Orleans or Baton Rouge station. Station was number 4 in both markets, up in the top 10, and that's what got a lot of attention to buyers who started calling, and eventually one of them made an offer we couldn't refuse. So, but I was happy in a way to get back to KTIB and to my roots and local news and community programming and it was good. It was a little more traumatic to sell KTIB in a way, for two reasons. One is because it was a station where we had more fun, because people could just walk in, we could run out and do a remote. And secondly, because it meant I was out of the business, you know. But I stuck around in a consultancy for about 2 years with the new owners, and then that contract expired, and I just decided to settle down.
Now, what do you do for a living now?
Well, I try to get out of the house as much as possible, since my wife announced that she wants her space. She said, "You're not supposed to intrude." But I have a little office at home, and I do some brokerage work, selling radio stations that I have for people, and I have sold 2 of them. One to the owner of this station, sold him a station in New Iberia, and then I sold the other AM in New Iberia to another group for a different owner over there. And right now I have nothing on the burners, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I'd love to do it, and I'm actively looking for people who want to sell or buy radio stations, because I think I can help them. I know a lot of people. I served 8 years on the board of directors in the National Association of Broadcasters, representing Louisiana and Mississippi. And I also served on the radio advisory board of the National Broadcasting Company's radio division. And I served several years on the Associated Press board of directors. So I know most of the movers and shakers and people all over the country in broadcasting. And they would take a phone call from me, you know, so I'm able to, you know, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, I also, interestingly enough, believe it or not, I read a lot of books, and I get paid for reading them because I write book reviews for a magazine in KTIB-AM, Lifestyle at KTIB-AM. So once a month, I have about seven reviews in there.
Wow.
Books. I'd just like to toss in one employee who worked for me that you didn't mention, and that's Linda Bellinger, who we hired. And Linda, I think, is still in the capacity of manager here.
Right.
And Linda is an extraordinary woman in that she is able to do just about any job in radio, including some engineering work. And I know she has worked steadfastly over the weekends, mornings, evenings, no matter what, doing sales. Only thing I think she hasn't been into too much is announcing, although I do hear her from time to time with Gene Richard on Dialogue. So those are 2 people I think are doing some good work along with you. And Kuyon, who you mentioned. So I think things are okay. I just like to see my station here. I still think of it as mine, you know, prosper and do well for the community.
Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, William. It's a pleasure.
As always, Raymond Saadi proved himself to be upfront and honest about the people and events that shaped his radio career. Hence, his invaluable part of KTIB's history will not be forgotten. Thanks for listening to this special presentation of Oldie 640 KTIB-AM Thibodaux, Louisiana, proudly celebrating 50 years of South Louisiana broadcasting. Another member of KTIB's multifaceted staff over the past 50 years is Roy Pugh. Throughout the 70s and 80s, Roy's voice was heard doing Nickel State Sports in addition to engineering duties and countless other on-air roles. Let's listen to his memories of